Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and the vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who is also the host of his own show, The Rational Egoist, which I know all of you are watching every single day. Michael, anything new on the Rational Egoist front?
Actually, there's going to be a couple of weeks where I'm not going to have any episodes. My producer is, what's the word I'm looking for now? I can't, occupied elsewhere for a couple of weeks. So after the 16th, we'll be back up and running with episodes of that. I also have an announcement about tomorrow. Tomorrow is Diana's birthday. I am taking her to lunch, so I will not be here tomorrow, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're back at it.
And I will be working tomorrow. I have a 6 a.m. call time, folks, so I will not be here either. So there will be no Capitalist Corner tomorrow, but Michael will be here Wednesday and Thursday. I might show up on Thursday, depends on my travel, and Friday for sure. I hope you guys were checking your premises over the weekend. I want you to remember that we are not affiliated with the Capitalist Party. Everything that we say here are our opinions, our own personal opinions with respect to capitalism and the way it should work in the society at large. Of course, as usual, Michael sent me a plethora of articles that I had to read today. A plethora of articles and some grok stuff as well. Thank you for the grok stuff, Michael.
You're welcome.
There was a few things I found particularly interesting. There was a deep fake over the week.
Can I say something real quickly?
Go ahead.
Hi to Marco, Amando, and Melvin.
Cool. Now, why them in particular? Are they new?
Well, they're in the yard here working, and I guess Subby's got them watching the show because he says in the chat, "Say hi to them." So I figure we say hi to them. Maybe we get a couple more viewers. You know, we're 5 away from the 500 mark.
5 away, folks, from 500. So remember to like and subscribe to this and to pass it along social media, because the ideas of individualism need to retake this society. Let's make America individualistic again. Wouldn't that
capitalist be again? Capitalist.
Well, that's all baked into individualism, my friend. In my view, of course, we could probably argue about that. We probably will. Hey, man, there was a deep fake with Trump giving a press conference about the trans people were not real, and you can put a stick on a horse's nose, but it's not a unicorn. It's still a horse. And this thing went viral on social media. Of course, created all kinds of insane backlash. But it was all AI. It was taken from an original press conference, I guess, and just modified through AI to this.
That was good.
It was good. So good. I mean, Plus, you know, we've come to see Trump as rather a mercurial, unhinged figure who's capable of saying pretty much anything. So it's not implausible that throwing out red meat to his base, you know, who are, you know, rabidly anti-trans, rabidly anti-left woke, that this would appeal to them. So it seemed plausible on a lot of different levels, man. I mean, how did they uncover this? First of all, it finally got a community note that said, this is AI, you know, this is not real. But, you know, by that time it had gone around the world 60 times. How did it make you feel, man? It made me a little nervous.
Well, I thought it was real, of course. And on Friday, I sent it to you and Jim as part of the story we were going to do. And then I noticed that it was AI thankfully, before we went on the air, but it looked real. But the thing that really contributes to it appearing real is we can imagine Trump saying that, right? Like, we would not be surprised if Trump came out and said that, right? It wouldn't be like, oh, all right, you know.
That's what made it real. That's what made it seem real, is because, well, that's something an unhinged Trump would say. This is a guy who says Kim Jong-un they're great friends. He's great friends with Kim Jong-un.
This is great pal, yeah.
He's a great pal. And, you know, Putin is a super, super smart guy, you know, somebody he admires on a lot of levels. So when you got somebody saying that, it's not so far off that they'd say trans people aren't real. Well, folks, for the record, this is not, of course, a representation of the Capitalist Party, but I do think trans folks are real. But it's a complex phenomenon since it's been politicized. It's certainly something that we could talk about because it's not quite what it's represented to be, for sure. And maybe we could even have Blaire White, an actual trans woman, on the show one day to talk about the trans phenomenon, because I think she is more expert on the phenomenon than I.
See, I don't think so. I follow him on whatever it is, X,
Yeah.
and it seems like he's a what's the word I'm looking for? Provocateur. Like big MAGA likes to post sensationalist stuff. I do. This is going to come off. God, maybe I should not. I was going to say I do know some trans people that we could have on the show, because I do think it's a very interesting.
Like Deirdre McCloskey.
Deirdre McCloskey would be great if you.
Either you're frozen or
We just went off for a second.
okay, there you go. You went off at Deirdre McCloskey would be great if.
Well, the thing is that his thing is not look at me, I'm trans, right? This is a well-respected economist who I don't know what's happening here. Why my thing went off, but so I think that would be great because he's somebody that doesn't politicize it. So I feel like we could have a really good discussion.
Well, but I think Blaire White would be interesting too, because I'm going to say because she doesn't politicize it either. I think she comes out against the insanity of the trans movement and the social contagion that's sort of taken on. And whether you think she's sensationalistic or not, I think she brings to light some real issues, and I think is fighting more or less on the right side. I mean, she's not a right wing person. Well, she comes off as a right wing person, but she's more sort of in the libertarian camp. I mean, her and Michael Malice are good pals. I mean, they hang out together all the time. I had dinner with Blaire White. I thought she was super cool.
Yeah, it seems I'm being kind of reprimanded for not saying she. I have a hard time because this is my take on the trans thing. I do not think it possible for a man to become a woman or for a woman to become a man. I don't care what surgeries they have. I do think that it's a very real phenomenon rather, that people experience their psychology as that of the opposite sex and don't feel comfortable in their own bodies and are far more comfortable living as the sex that they were not born as. And I think that it's very real that they can identify as the opposite sex. I do not think that makes them the opposite sex. At the same time, I'm like, if somebody wants to be called she, and I mean, I don't really care, but I get, it's like a thing in my head where I'm saying, I know this is still a guy, regardless of how he identifies, but at the same time, doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If you say she or he, that's not a big deal to me. If they want that, that's fine.
Yeah, I agree with you on the purely biological sense. There is no possible way to actually turn a man into a woman or vice versa, no matter what kind of surgical enhancements they have. I believe that many of the people either self-diagnosing or being diagnosed now with gender dysphoria actually have other kinds of mental illness that are being misdiagnosed and being lumped into this category. I think it's tremendously attractive for people who feel outside of any group to be drawn to this particular political movement because it gives them a sense of belonging and power, and also a outlet for their rage. As we've seen, a few of the mass shooters that we've been experiencing the last few times have been trans people who have been absolutely enraged by their, mostly self-induced psychotic rage. But that I still will say, if you look at Blaire White, she looks like a she. I'm sure until she takes her pants off and you see her junk, but otherwise she looks like a she.
Why would I take her pants off?
Because, well, I'm just saying. I'm not saying that you would. I'm saying that until one.
I get it. I'm teasing you. I get it.
You would not know that Blaire White was a man. And clearly the transition has worked for her psychologically, as it apparently worked for Deirdre McCloskey. And so it's psychologically a cure in some respects for whatever it is they're experiencing. So I support them, and we'll call Deirdre a she, and we'll call.
Sure, you're right. You're correct on this one.
Well, I'm usually correct, but I'll let you go. I'll let you slide on that. Now, speaking of trans, Kristi Noem. No, that wasn't a good transition. Look, Kristi Noem had a very troubling exchange here. At least for me, was it troubling for you that Kristi Noem said that unless they had put National Guard troops and I think Marines on the streets of Los Angeles wouldn't be standing. Now we're starting to hear so much political hyperbole from even people like Kristi Noem, who I thought at one time was a relatively sane person. But now that she's head of Homeland Security, she's sort of taking on the Trump mantle. In fact, during the Q&A, when asked about whether or not they would start depositing troops in other cities, she said, "Really, that's the president's call. That's really the president's call." Is there an independent person within this cabinet that makes their own call, that can make their own executive decisions on this and decide whether something is right or wrong or super constitutional or not? Everybody seems to be in this administration deferring to Trump's feelings on the matter. Do you think that the city would have burned down, Michael? You weren't here. I was.
No, I don't. It hasn't burned down yet. It's been there for many times. It survived the Watts riots, and it survived the riots over Rodney King. It survived the
which I was there for.
Yeah, the Bloods and the Crips were murdering each other at astounding rates, and it still didn't fall. But they've learned that the way to get Trump's approval is to kiss his ass and to cater to his delusion. So that's what they do. It's a very scary thing because there's nobody that will tell him the truth now. They've arranged it he's arranged it in such a way, and that's the way it goes. That to me is the scariest part. The scariest part of the whole Trump phenomenon is when he said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and his supporters would still support him. I think that is true because I think there are true believers. And I think there's these people like Kristi Noem who know better, but kiss his ass anyways to have their own power and to, promote themselves. It's a very, very dangerous situation.
Yeah, Kathy says that Trump will not let people in his administration be independent. You know what an independent person is called in the Trump administration, Michael?
Fired.
That's it. Yes, fired. You got it. You got my punchline, baby. And this is unfortunate. It's a scary series of events because we know Trump is not a healthy psychological individual and potentially not healthy physically. There's a lot of stuff going around on the internet. Have you seen pictures of Trump? They're trying to out whatever his physical issues are, not just the swollen ankles, but stuff going on with his glands. I don't know. It's looking pretty. It's looking like he's probably hiding some kind of condition, which I wouldn't put past him either. Primacy of consciousness guys don't really pay attention to reality. They think their feelings and thoughts are reality. So I'm sure if he thinks I'm healthy, I can continue on at the pace that I'm going without any ill effects on my body. We're about to see, I think, something catastrophic happen to the man. Now, this isn't a threat. I'm saying the man's body is going to go.
Well, the guy is 80, right? Or just about 80, maybe 81. He's certainly an old guy. He's not in great shape, despite what he tells everybody. But there was
the best shape of anybody who's 80 years old
ever. Yeah, he's the best at everything. But there was this weird thing over the weekend where people were speculating that he was dead. I mean, it just.
Why did he not show up on social media, or did he not?
He was gone for a couple days. He didn't show up on social media, so people started to speculate. Where is he? What's going on? Now, this is what I find to just be the nuttiest stuff ever, and it goes for both sides, right? If that would have been Biden that nobody heard of, the MAGAs would have all been out there saying, "Whoa, where is he? What are they hiding? What's he doing?" And the Democrats would have all said this is ridiculous, and now it's just reversed. It's Trump that disappeared, so it's the MAGA saying it's ridiculous, and the Dems saying what happened, where is he? But in my view, to be honest, like, I don't care that I didn't hear from him for 3 days. I could use a break. I'm far more concerned with the way he's running the country and the type of policies that he's putting in place, and whether he's playing golf or not. You know what I mean? Or whatever he's doing. I don't know what the hell is going on here. I'm getting very upset.
Are you freezing over there?
No, but so I'm plugged directly into the internet. So the little sign on the bottom is usually a square, right? That tells me what I'm connected to. But now it's showing Wi-Fi. Now it is showing that I'm full, but I don't understand why I've disconnected from the Wi-Fi. I have this feeling that Subby and his pals are out there knocking stuff around, and it's messing with my reception. I can't think of any other possibility. But,
that's not surprising. That's not surprising. You're boomer adjacent. Ashley Rizzi says the emperor is not wearing any clothes. That is true, and what an unpleasant thought. When you imagine Trump without clothes, can you unsee that, Michael?
I'm not thinking about Trump without clothes. What is happening? I don't want to talk about that.
So, well, it was a question. It was a statement that was put in the private chat. So I actually aired it out here for everybody to see. You sent me an article from Reason Magazine that I thought was really cool because of its implications. If similar circumstances were to, say, happen in California, if a capitalist party member were to win, say, in the state legislature or in the governor of California, an excellent idea for deregulating the housing market. Well, it's already happening in Japan. It's called How Japan's Microspaces Unleash Economic Experimentation. Now, Tokyo in particular was a very interesting spot, according to the article, because, of course, it was decimated in World War II. And so when it built up without any government infrastructure to help it. It sort of was spontaneously generated out of the actions and lives of the people there. And so the development did not happen, because it didn't happen in a planned way. Original and interesting ways of dealing with space started to happen. And they incorporated this into their laws and into their zoning and regulatory practices there, which are not onerous at all, which are very wide open and liberalized, and which, if applied to states like California, would solve the housing problem instantaneously. You want to describe some of the ways in which they've simplified the zoning laws, Michael?
Well, I don't really understand the intricacies of the laws, but I do know that they're run on a national basis, not locally, which is what's done in America. Zoning laws are local. So every little local community, the majority in that community, once they get their property, wants to maintain the status quo. I shouldn't say everybody, it's exaggeration, but the point is they want to keep their neighborhood the way it is. So they immediately turn into mini tyrants and tell anybody that buys property what they can and can't do. So the economist Brian Kaplan, who, despite being an anarchist, is a really good economist, very, very smart guy, wrote a great book called Build, Baby, Build. And it's like a comic book, but it really explains it. And one of the things that I hadn't previously thought of in terms of not having housing, he says you can build vertically. You don't have to take up a lot of horizontal space. You can build vertically and you will accomplish the same goal. And they've got things like that are in Japan, buildings shaped like triangles where they fit right in between other buildings. So they fit these into different spaces. They alter the shapes that are not what we're used to, and they build there, and they have little bars where a few people can go in and get a drink. They basically, it's like when I think about time efficiency, it's space efficiency. They make use of all the space that they have, and it works very, very well. Unfortunately, like I said, here in America, we have local zoning, and people, if they don't like the appearance of something, the height, whatever. And of course, what they don't like to say is if minorities move into the neighborhood, that, we don't want cheaper housing because that's what's going to happen. Of course, they never say that. And I'm the first person, believe me, I have for a long time, called out claims of racism when they're just fictional. But when you're specifically opposed to all different policies that are like conservatives, for instance, claim to be that they're for property rights, right? As long as I've followed politics, big property rights. But when it comes to, the property rights to build buildings which are likely to house, that minorities are going to build into, all of a sudden they're opposed to the property rights.
Now, won't they claim that those buildings, because they'll attract a lower income of people in lower economic status, are going to lower property values for everybody involved?
Yes, that's what they would claim. I don't buy it. If you said it in terms of, I think that if you let blacks move into the neighborhood, you're going to lower property values. That would be, an outrage. So they say things like, we want to maintain the character of our neighborhood, that sort of thing. But if you look at, I've had so many arguments on talk radio about these issues, because I said, look, if I'm a black person, right, and I see that conservatives are constantly touting small government, right? They want little government power, individual rights, pro-freedom, except for when it comes to local zoning laws, the war on drugs, and things like qualified immunity, so conservatives would always say they hate judicial activism, but qualified immunity was created by judicial activism, but the conservatives love it. So if I'm a minority and I'm saying, okay, you favor the war on drugs, which disproportionately affects my community, you favor these local zoning property restrictions, which disproportionately affects me, and you're for this qualified immunity, which allows cops basically to get away with whatever they want, what am I supposed to think at that point? Even if it's not true, right, that race is implicated here, you have to understand why people would be a little suspicious, right?
So I do indeed. Even if it's feeding a paranoid narrative, it has some roots in observable reality. It's you can deduce from all of the context there that something is fishy. Mark says something that I completely disagree with. I want to get your opinion on. He says mass deportations would solve California housing problem. First of all, not true. It wasn't built for this type of population density. First of all, not true. You realize that they said something like this in Israel, Mark. They said that the Palestinian mandate, the reason they started prohibiting Jewish immigration there in the latter part of the 30s due to Arab pressure and violence, was because they said it was reaching a population saturation point at which the land could no longer support any more of the people on there. Of course, the influx of Zionism with technology, modern agriculture, building practices, of course, changed that metric entirely. And now a land that was oversaturated at about 1.2 million has somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 or 17 million people living in that area. So come on, it's nonsense. So that's not true. But he says in 1994, a white blue-collar worker could be a millionaire in California with no college. Well, believe it or not, Mark, that's also true now, because there's such a demand for trade and skilled labor now, because so many people are going into getting bad colleges degrees and putting themselves in debt. There's been a high demand for work like welders, where people are starting off at $160,000 a year. So these folks, which are in high demand, can now, without a college education, make a better living than their college-educated person who's now starting out life in $200,000 of debt and being a barista at Starbucks because their degree is completely worthless in the real world. Now, before I get into some of these categories that I think would be helpful to California, Michael, I want you to respond to his idea of mass deportation solving the housing problem.
Okay, so the first thing, this is another area, and I don't know if it applies to Mark. So, Mark, this isn't about you, but where conservatives expose their hypocrisy, correct? Think about this. Conservatives, when I first started studying politics, always heard about if it's not in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, Congress doesn't have the power. Lo and behold, Article 1, Section 8, Congress is not given the power to regulate immigration. Do conservatives then say, oh, that's true, even though I'm opposed to immigration, we're going to go with the Constitution? No, that's not what they do. And I've had arguments about this with conservative talk show hosts here in Connecticut. They're on there, they're spewing all their hatred for judicial activism. They're opposed to it. Okay, well, then you should be for immigrants, right? On a federal level, they should have nothing to do with it. Well, no, it's funny how that always works. So now, technically, right, if you were to remove half the population of any geographical location, you would have a drop in housing prices because you would have a drop in demand. But why would we go toward the solution if we're for free markets, if we're capitalists, if we believe in individual rights? Why would we go to the solution that requires more government authority to initiate force against peaceful people to remove them instead of going toward deregulation, which would cause the government to get out of the way and allow free people to prosper? So, like Mark says, your cities are drug infested because of mass immigration. No, your cities are drug infested because of drug laws, because the nature of the war on drugs. Again, why not go toward the policies that actually free people? Why focus on those that are going to use force against people, limit freedom, and by the way, also limit the freedom of Americans? Because if I'm not allowed to rent to an immigrant, even if they're illegal, if I'm not allowed to rent to them, to serve them, to associate with them, to hire them, you're also limiting my freedom. Not only that, but when they do their raids to find people, whether it be drug raids or immigration raids, innocent citizens get caught in those nets. Their freedom is limited as well.
Well, let's also talk about the unseen economic impacts of this. I mean, you're taking away all. Let's assume that the vast majority of those immigrants that you're mass deporting out of California have jobs with incomes. They support industries. They contribute values to the community. Oftentimes at a greater rate than the natives. You're now robbing California of that economic might. You're now robbing California businesses of the jobs that they provided. Now they're going to have to downsize. Now you're going to have goods and services that are less accessible to you. In my view, these mass deportations will, one, not only not solve the housing crisis, but two, they will make Californians generally poorer than they are. So I'm against poverty, folks, as I think any capitalist, even socialists are on this page with us. We just have different ideas about how it is one relieves poverty. Before I get to these categories real quick, Ariana said, fun fact, the guy who won the election against Allen on the 26th called and asked Allen to work with him. So there's a political upheaval going on as we speak in Argo, Alabama, where lots of people were dissatisfied with the election results, where the good old boy won and the Capitalist Party candidate lost, but made a massive impact on the community. So there is a subsect of the community that's getting together to form a political opposition. Now, I guess this guy, whose name is Corky, understands this and now wants to bring the quote-unquote enemy into his camp to work with him. Maybe he's pragmatic enough to see that the changes that Allen could bring would actually redound very well to his reputation, or maybe he's just trying to make sure he can control the person he perceives as the political opposition. But folks, the American Capitalist Party has made itself felt in Argo. And it's having reverberations in the community. The community will never be the same after they've heard the right principles. They want the right principles. And it's just a matter of time, folks, before we start getting into office and changing the way things are done. Now, there are like 12 categories that define in Tokyo, in Japan, housing regulations and zoning and regulations. The first category is interesting because it's officially designated as exclusively residential. In practice, that doesn't mean only homes can be built, however. Small shops, dental clinics, hair salons, and daycares are all permitted. The only thing that's prohibited are large industries. Now, Michael, I've seen this over the United States in states that don't have the strict zoning laws and regulatory statutes that California has. I've been in five-star restaurants in residential neighborhoods in Houston. I've seen dental offices and legal practices out of houses in other states that don't practice these kinds of onerous zoning and regulations. That's good. I mean, that is a good thing for people. It's not only convenient, it makes their lives easier, makes these services more accessible, but it's just it's the way a free market should operate. Yeah, you should be able to have a health food store operate a health food store out of your house if you so choose, right? You should be able to have a juice market in your house if you so choose. If people want to come there, it's convenient and cheap. Your home then becomes a place of business, and I like that. I think we should do more of that in California. I don't think I have any influence with Gavin Newsom, however. No, believe it or not, he's got other priorities, namely attacking Trump and trying to turn Trump's own methodology against him and capitalize on that as a politician, which was the subject of one of the other articles.
Yeah, but so I got a quick question that's unrelated to any of this, but I just was looking to my phone, and I noticed I have another one of these. I get these friend requests. They send me messages and they say, "I'm sorry, but you keep popping up in my friend suggestions. Do we know each other?" And I'm just curious that why is it always these incredibly hot women that think they know me? Right? Like,
are they catfishing?
Yeah, it's always these incredibly hot women. I think we know each other. Really? This has never happened to me in real life where incredibly hot women just approach me. Hey, do we know each other? But it happens quite frequently on social media. Just figured I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, it's called catfishing. Be careful. So
I know they're not real, Lee. Thank you.
Well, I actually have a friend. He's no longer a friend of mine, but I had a friend who actually thought that the hot woman who was, sharing like sexual exchanges with him while his dying wife was in the other room, I might add, was real. I couldn't break it to him. Let's talk about this. And we went to Gavin Newsom, but I want to hold off on Gavin Newsom because I want to talk about Frankenfood. I want to talk about GMO.
Weren't you focused on the things in Japan?
I was, but I just wanted to do one category because I thought.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to continue that. All right.
I'm going to go through all 12 categories, but I like the one category that's exclusively residential, but you can have a small business out of your residence.
All right.
And this is something that California should adopt, and it would make life much easier for everybody. Do you want to talk about why it would make life easier, or is it self-evident?
No. I'm all for moving on. I just thought that you got distracted. I know that happens to you sometimes. You forget where you are, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to draw you back. But now that you've laid it out, I understand you're coherent. We'll go forward.
Like I'm not you. Okay, I am coherent. I'm coherent. You're saying that
I'm smart.
I'm smart. Well, I don't know if you knew about this, Michael, but there is a movement against genetically modified organisms, GMOs. People think they are horrible. They think they're horrible. They think that if you eat them, because it's artificial, it's bad for you. Because it's natural, it's good for you. This is what people have a tendency to think. But this is not the case, folks. In fact, genetically modified food is as good for you as natural food, and oftentimes carries with it benefits that natural food does not. For example, if they're growing beef out of cells, as opposed to having to grow cattle and slaughter the cattle, and all the methane that the cattle produces, all the resources that the cattle consumes in order to grow to the size that it's a usable beef. You save all of those resources based on lab-grown food, lab-grown beef. It's not bad for you, folks. It's actually good for you. One of the examples they used was a skin graft that they used where a woman in Australia had burned herself on a go-kart. And they said, well, we could actually graft skin from your butt, put it onto this area and, let it heal. Or we could 3D print skin with your own skin cells and graft it on there. Would you like to be the first 3D grafted skin patient on the planet? She said, why not? And I say, why not? Heck yeah. They can apparently 3D print ears now from cartilage grown from your own cartilage, artificial ears. Artificial, folks, man-made is good. Man-made is just an adjustment of nature to make it more amenable to human life. I love that. And I wanted to read off to you a little list, Michael, of things that were toxic before human involvement. Do you mind if I read you a little list?
No, go ahead. I love the lists.
Did you know that almonds were toxic before human involvement?
All humans were toxic before human involvement?
Almonds.
Almonds. Oh, okay. I must have thought you said all men.
No, almonds were toxic before humans rationally selected the good tasting stuff. They had cyanide in them. When you ate an almond, it converted to cyanide in your body. That's why if you're in a morgue and somebody smells like almonds, they can pretty much tell that the person died of cyanide poisoning. You know what else was not good for you to eat in the wild? Apples. Apples have been genetically engineered by human beings to be palatable. You can say the same thing with bananas, carrots, cassava, corn, cucumbers, eggplants, peaches, watermelons, the domesticated dog, domesticated cattle. Anything that comes under human production, folks, becomes domesticated plant or animal. That means it is enhanced by human development to enhance human life. Those are good things, folks. GMOs are good things. Do you have anything to say about it? Do you buy things that are non-GMO? They banned them in Europe, you know.
I'll buy anything. This is the thing, and I don't mean anything literally. The whole idea of the people who think it's got to be natural, and they're just saying something is unnatural, they think makes it bad. Megan Ribbons, who's wonderful and has a show, and if she wants to post the name of her show in the chat, that'd be wonderful so people can watch it. But she says every human food is genetically modified. What is called GMO just uses better technology for the genetic modification. At a larger point, right? It's like even when you look at the Amish, right? We don't believe in modern technology. Well, then why are you driving a wagon? Because I got news for you. There was a time when humans didn't have wagons, right? So it seems to me that the people who are against technology in general, this stuff in particular, they want to stop at a particular preferred point in progress. And it's always completely arbitrary, right? It's not a matter of, okay, this is objectively the best time. It's just, this is what I happen to like. I don't care if people don't want to eat the Frankenfoods, as you call them. That's fine. They don't have to eat them. What pisses me off is so-called, capitalist governors. I think DeSantis is one of them. These pro-free market guys want to ban lab-grown meat. That is just absurd.
Yeah, I'm sure he's doing it for cattle interests, and this is the same guy that has alligator Alcatraz. This is not really a fact check, though, Persephone, and I want to talk to you about why it's not. While many modern vegetables have genetically improved through selective breeding over the centuries, only a few specific bioengineered crops are grown as GMOs today. That's right. One, it's few because they're prohibited by states, unfortunately. But the only difference is that the fact that it's engineered in the lab makes the rational selection faster. That's all. It just makes it faster. So we don't have to wait 10,000 years for the thing to finally, through the selective process, to actually be palatable for human consumption. We now can do it now, and I think that's fantastic. And I think France should get out of the way of GMOs. America should get out of the way of GMOs. The states should get out of the way of GMOs. Let us have our lab-grown food, because if you're, especially people on the left who are environmentalists, raging about environmentalism, Michael, they rage against farm-raised salmon. They rage against it. Now, there could be some real issues with respect to what the salmon eat, that it may not contain as many good nutrients as the wild caught stuff. But by the same token, you're raging against the alternative to wild caught salmon. Now, if you're worried about salmon runs, if you're worried about there being an ecosystem for salmon in the world, then you should be cultivating better run salmon farms that have, I guess, cleaner standards, so that the fish are eating things appropriate to the fish's natural environment, and so that we are then getting the nutrients appropriate to us. You shouldn't be, the environmental people should be loving this stuff. If you can grow crops and meat and stuff in a lab instead of wasting all that acreage on
I got to call your attention to something.
Agro, yes, go ahead.
This might be the most ridiculous comment and we've been trolled a lot that I've ever seen. You just blast the Amish because they wouldn't consciously support Israel. First of all, Israel is spelled A-E, not E-A-L. That's the first thing. Secondly, I didn't blast the Amish. I said I used them as an example of people who want to stop technology at a given point, which I also said refers to most people. And I don't know what the Amish's take on Israel is. I don't think they probably even care much about it. And also, to be honest, like Israel, when it comes to issues that I'm concerned with, given that I'm the one who commented on the Amish, Israel's not at the top of my list, guy. You can go back and watch past episodes of this show. You can see my appearances on other shows. Like
Israel marked sort of my thing over my. I didn't even know the Amish did not consciously support Israel.
Do they unconsciously support Israel?
That's what I'm thinking there's an unconscious support of fellow religious community. So anyway, that Mark is an interesting cat. We got to keep him on here longer.
You want to get Mark back on here?
Why not? Why not?
All right, well, keep commenting, Mark.
So today's Labor Day, man. You know that?
Yeah. No, yeah.
Celebrated.
It's actually in the title of today's episode.
Yeah. So celebrated the world over, Labor Day, honoring the workers of the world. Do you want to talk a little bit about Labor Day and what it means? And do you agree with it? Do you think it's a
okay? So generally speaking, I'm opposed to holidays. I don't like holidays, and what I mean by that is federal holidays, government mandated holidays, or things I just don't like. I don't care for. I think they're dumb. I think if a private business wants to give people a day off for a given holiday, that's their business. But I don't know why the government is in the business of the stuff. They have no business being in that business. But specifically what I did a lot of reading on the subject this morning. I don't know about a lot, but I did some reading on the subject, the history of Labor Day and how it stemmed from, various strikes, the Pullman strike, the Haymarket Square thing. And, what they accomplished ultimately is in the 1930s, they achieved the 40-hour work week. Again, this is not something that the government should be involved in. The government should not have any business in what workers are paid, on what businesses can charge, on how many hours people can work. So, I just think that this is horrible. And I made a post this morning, and some people got the right idea. I asked, why isn't Free Enterprise Day a day, and Entrepreneurship Day a day, or Capitalism Day? And some people came out, and they were right, and they said, well, because capitalists don't want this sort of thing. But I just, to me, it goes deeper than that. To me, I'm going to get us in some trouble, Mark. Are you ready for some trouble?
I'm always ready for trouble.
Okay. So I think that people a lot of the time like to celebrate mediocrity. They like to celebrate the normal, not the exceptional. So labor, when people speak of labor and all the wonderful things labor does, I think what they try to do is elevate normal, ordinary people to an above ordinary, normal place so that they can praise them and celebrate them. It's not the inventors, the creators, the entrepreneurs, the geniuses who advance civilization. It's the guy who, it's the grunt who carries things, sacks of wheat around or whatever. And look, I'm not disparaging anybody's job at all. Right. I can not physical labor. Like I'm very mechanically disinclined. Right. So I have the utmost respect for anyone that labors, that works hard. That's fine. But the bottom line is that your day laborer is in far more numbers of them are in far more supply than are your entrepreneurs and your inventors. But yet we don't celebrate in the entrepreneur and inventor. And in fact, many times they're disparaged and put down, whereas we celebrate labor. Well, we don't, but you know what I mean. So I think that has a very big part of it. Now, we can get the hate mail or whatever, but that's my take.
Yeah, but I don't think it's about celebrating mediocrity. I'm going to disagree with you. I think it's something.
Well, then you're wrong.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I think it's something that that Rand discovered, right? When she wrote Atlas Shrugged is about the importance of man's mind in the world. How man's mind is literally the lever that moves the world. And people don't understand that. They think for many years it was labor, it was muscle that seemed to make things change, not the mind. And look, that revelation, what may have happened many years ago, but it wasn't really put into our consciousness as a nation until the 50s with Rand. There's not a lot of respect for the rational mind in any part of human life. And people think that because labor is touchable, right? It's tangible. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my dog from going off the couch. Because it's tangible, it's easy to see, it's concrete, it must be so. And the labor of the mind is not, so it must not be so. It's harder to recognize it. So, I'm a little less cynical than you about it. I just think people don't understand the relationship of the mind to human prosperity. Because they see people working, it's like the seen and unseen problem from Bastiat. What they don't see is the mental labor that goes into the organization of capital. That's why they think capitalists don't do anything. They don't see the mental labor that goes into the design of something or to the invention of something. They just see the people building it. And so since it's self-evident, it's right there in front of them, they think that is the thing that is most elementary to our existence, when it's not. It's the mental effort that's most elementary. So that's my less cynical take on it than you.
I don't think that's less cynical. I don't even think it contradicts what I said.
Well, you said celebrating mediocrity. I don't think people are doing it to celebrate mediocriity.
Well, I think that both can be true. So you think that there's no push in society at all.
No, I didn't say that.
But that's what I'm talking about. It's the what's the word I'm looking for here? It's the everybody gets a trophy mentality.
But I think that's a new phenomenon. I think the idea that celebrating
I don't know if it is
tangible because it's self-evident. That's a less cynical way of looking at it than
how many times do you see, and you've seen this even back in the the early 1900s, whatever, where the people will talk about
out in the early 1900s.
Yes, the real hero is the working man. The real hero. I mean, even Marxism, even what you talked about earlier, where you talked about the where it's a focus on muscle and not on brains. In Marxism, they talk about, basically the heroism of the worker. The worker are the creator of value, whereas the capitalists are parasites. The capitalists, the entrepreneurs, they're parasites. They don't work. The renters, they're not good. It's all about celebrating your average Joe, your average guy. And again, it's not to disparage the average guy. It's not to disparage him at all. But the point is that, to me, when I want to celebrate something, I want to celebrate the unordinary. I want to celebrate the great, the people that I can look up to, that I can aspire to be. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to strive towards. That's what I want to work towards.
And there can be great workers who are aspirational in nature and don't just want to stay stuck in one place, who don't want to just be mediocre for their whole lives. But
I'm not saying they're mediocre. I'm saying, but if I did, then I misspoke. I'm talking about
mediocrity means.
But the whole point, you're right. But the whole point is, the people that are, I'm like I am, poor, right? I need heroes to aspire to. I need examples of greatness to move towards. That's what I want. That's what moves civilization forward. That's what moves an individual life forward, is striving for greatness, striving to be better, not striving for a 40-hour work week.
Striving for less, striving to do not aspirational, striving to be just here I agree with you. This is something that we should talk about, because I think the culture at one time looked at matinee idols and models as iconic figures. They looked at them as heroic, something to strive for. Now they're seen as unrealistic goals for women and or men that makes them feel comparatively worse as opposed to, well, look at the ideal that I want to strive for. I may not be able to hit that exact ideal, but I can get my own version of that by reaching upward. We now have a culture that reaches down, right? And the people that we're supposed to admire are encouraged to reach down as opposed to inspiring us to reach up. Now, I remember going back to teaching and watching my old mentor who explained to me, look, I can't teach the way I used to. He used to be a very aspirational guy. You had to reach up to him. And I brought that into my own teaching style. Now he teaches, people who are half illiterate. I watch actors in class. They're not sensitive. They're not in the moment. They're self-involved. They're out of emotional adjustment to the context, to the circumstances. They can't interpret scripts anymore. They don't know how to read properly. This is stuff that could be corrected in the classroom by an aspirational teacher who doesn't put up with, being satisfied with where you are. And I think we should all be aspirational, and maybe we should use this Labor Day to be aspirational. If we're working at a job that's just something that pays the bills, how can you make it the best possible thing for yourself? Not just a stepping stone to something bigger, but how can you enjoy that 40 hours a week that you're working at that job? How can you make yourself the best possible employee? How can I make myself the best possible actor, the best possible person? This shouldn't send you in fits of self-doubt and neurosis. It should inspire you to be good. It's okay to be aspirational, folks. It's a good thing to be aspirational, to seek to be better than you are right now. And it's an insatiable quality that you will never ever find the end of that potential, and that's partly what makes it great. Anyway. Anything to add to that, Michael, before we go on to the next little bit of news from the Free Press? The New York mayor frontrunner Mamdani is looking to distance himself somewhat from the Democratic Socialists of America, a far-left group that helped power his political rise. And the move comes after polls show that Mamdani is still falling short of 50% of the vote in November's general election, despite winning the Democratic nomination in June. Zoran never ran as an individual, but as a representative of the working class socialist movement, the DSA said after he won the primary. And also, interestingly enough, I heard that the vast majority of his funding comes outside of New York State.
I didn't know that.
Which makes me think that perhaps this political movement that everybody's up in arms about and has their panties in a wad about is really much ado about nothing. They're talking about this guy being the potential next mayor, but can he really be if most of his political support comes from outside the state, at least the monetary support, and if he can't win 50% of the vote, at least 50% of the vote, because socialists don't comprise 50% of the vote in Democratic New York. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in this New York race?
I don't know what's going to happen in the New York race. I think Mamdani is probably going to win.
You know what would be ironic is if he wins. Did we talk about this the last time?
Probably.
Yeah, because I keep seeing the scenario. If he does win, and I'm not sure that he will. If he does win, New York State has to balance his budget this term, right? Hochul will not allow him to do any of his socialist shenanigans. My dog is going crazy. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So Ariana Sneath said this earlier during the discussion about labor. She says this could have been messaged much better. I am not in the business of euphemism, right? I get the idea that you don't want to offend your everyday worker, but the people who push for 40-hour work weeks and 8-hour work days and special privileges for labor, the types that are going to celebrate Labor Day, I think it's okay to call them out. And I think it's okay to say the truth about them. I am here to tell the truth as I see it. I can be wrong. And if I'm wrong, show me I'm wrong. Mark, you did a good job. You made a strong argument. I appreciate it. But ultimately, my first concern when I'm communicating is that I'm communicating the truth. Then my next concern is maybe how I communicate it, but the truth is more important. And some truths, you just can't sugarcoat them. If I'm doing on this show an analysis of culture, I'm going to say what I think. I am not catering to the feelings of people who are going to be offended. If that is the show that you want or the person that you want, I'm not the guy.
So let me just say, let me just clarify our particular perspectives because they're slightly different.
Sure.
And we also know this doesn't represent the Capitalist Party anyway.
No, it does not.
It's our own opinions. Your opinion is that it's celebrating mediocrity. My opinion is that it's underrepresenting the value of the intellect and the mind.
Well, I actually agree with you, though.
In labor. Okay, good.
I agree with you. What I think is that when you're celebrating the lack of the mind, what you're celebrating is the average. Right? That's what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. I actually think you made a very strong point. But I just think that's what it ends up being, is that when and I think that has a lot to do with why people don't want to celebrate the mind, right? Because somebody can say, well, I can see myself doing this. I cannot see myself inventing an iPhone. Why should the guy who invents the iPhone get celebrated when I'm not getting celebrated?
So I think so that's all true as well, and I think undervaluing the mind in the place of the advancement of human life has been a disastrous orientation for human beings. It's what keeps socialism alive. It's what keeps communism alive, because people don't understand how utterly elementary to our survival the mind is, and without it, without that person with the forward vision, without that person, that inventor, that entrepreneur who takes risks with capital, without that person who's not afraid to do what's outside the box, who's not afraid to work 100 hours a week, without that person, the rest of us can't go. There's simply the rest of society crumbles, and labor becomes that much harder, actually, that much less productive. So labor became productive because of the mind. We can celebrate the labor of both. Are you doing what I think you're doing, mister? Yes, you are. Okay. So I'm going to let you do the capitalist thought of the day, because I'm having an issue with puppers over here that I have to take care of. So go ahead. I'm stepping away, but only because I have to deal with my.
But you will be back for the post show wrap up, correct?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you for your comments, even those comments that I disagree with. That's perfectly fine. Mark, you were welcome back to the show. And Ariana, you were certainly free to share your perspective in the comments. I welcome them. Mark welcomes them too. Ian wants to know about the post-show wrap-up. Yes, we have a debriefing after the show, Ian. Okay, the capitalist thought of the day is actually going to be about the role of the mind in human life. The mind is what takes us from living in the woods, running around with loincloths, to living in air conditioning buildings, to doing a show like this where we can argue about things like zoning laws. The mind is what allows me to use my cell phone to communicate across the world, to take pictures and send them wherever I want. The human mind is what ultimately elevates the human species. And it's something that should be praised, admired, and celebrated at all times. But in order for the human mind to operate optimally, it needs freedom. It needs to be able to think, and it needs to be able to put its thoughts into action. It needs to be able to plan across weeks, months, years, decades. But when allowed to do so, most people, I believe, that have an intact brain are capable of far more than what they are currently accomplishing. And in order to do that, we need to set goals, we need to dream big, and we need to work hard. And the system that allows for us to do that is capitalism. Folks, remember, we will not be here tomorrow, but Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we are back at it.
Yes, and remember to like and subscribe, folks, to share this across your social media platforms. Michael, I would say you needed a mind even for the loincloth, for fire, for shelter,
True that.
for everything, every advancement of human life,
Absolutely.
the simplest, most primitive to the supercomputers that we have today. They all came from the mind, folks, and labor helped. It certainly helps. It's a component to our lives, but it's also the mind. So we should have and celebrate the Mind Day. So everybody, if you're thinking labor is everything, the mind really isn't anything, capitalists don't do much to earn money, remember that risk and thinking are major components in anything that grows and innovates. And change your premises. Check your premises, folks, on this Labor Day. You've got 23 hours to do that, or actually you have 47 hours to do it, because we'll see you in the day after tomorrow, folks. So until that time, happy premises checking. See you later. Hey, buddy.
Well, the end stream isn't kicking in here. Must be something to do with the Wi-Fi.
So we're still live. Hi, everybody.
We are still live. Yeah.
So everybody
It's
can,
interesting.
everybody can know if they're still listening. I don't know. What was happening over there was Frankie was peeing a lake on the floor. I didn't have a chance to take him out right before the show, so he was like, I'm gonna do it where I got to do it because I'm 135 years old in dog years. Do you
Let me
want?
see. It's still not ending. I'm gonna have to hit it one more time.
Do you want to end this stream and start another one? Did we